So hello and welcome back to the Programmer Hour episode number 6.
If you have used VS Code in your life, you probably have heard about our today's guest, James Q. Quick.
And if you don't know about him, James Q. Quick is a programmer advocate. He is an amazing YouTuber with a whopping following of more than 100,000 subscribers, and he's an amazing web developer.
So just to give you a gist about today's podcast episode, we talked a lot about content creation, how to become a programmer advocate, what the job entails, and how to become an amazing web developer and what path to follow. Also, we talked about Jamstack, which is an amazing thing, an amazing topic that you should definitely learn about.
And most importantly, we talked about how to stay motivated and on track to achieve your goals and even surpass your goals.
So what the hell are we waiting for?
Let's get into it. So, hello, James, and welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for coming to the podcast. And we first discovered you on YouTube when we saw your video that you created describing your goals for 2021. So back then, I remember that you had around 30,000 subscribers, and now it's been just like 6-7 months, and you have close to 100,000 subscribers. So
Yes.
First of all, kudos to you on this stupendous achievement.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And that was actually one of his goals. If you remember, he wanted 100,000 by the end of this year, and we think you will surpass that by a lot.
Yeah, by a huge margin.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yes,
welcome. And
thanks.
And yes, you are a developer, a speaker, a teacher, a YouTuber. You have your courses. Do you also have a full-time job right now, or this is your full-time thing? Oh,
yeah, I
you
do.
have- Okay.
I was a developer advocate at Auth0 until recently. So I got promoted to developer media manager. So I work with our developer media content. So our YouTube channel, and we've been doing some Twitter spaces, and we've actually talked about doing a podcast. We haven't started that. So that's one of the things we might do in the future. But I've been doing that for a couple of months.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So we already know you. And but in case, and I'm sure that all of our viewers, we don't have a big following, but I'm sure all of our viewers already know you. But in case they don't, please introduce yourself for anyone who's watching this video.
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned like developer, speaker, and teacher. I've been doing some combination of those things professionally for 8 or 9 years now. And I've started to adopt a new tagline of I teach developers through content. So like all the content that I create comes from a place of just enjoying to teach people. So I've more formally taught in classrooms, and I've done boot camps and that sort of stuff. But now do it more through the content that I create. So I do YouTube videos. I'm on TikTok now, which has been a lot of fun.
Oh, you're on TikTok. Oh, that's great. We have been thinking since a long time to go on TikTok, but we just don't know what to do.
We actually are on TikTok.
Yeah,
we do
are.
have a TikTok profile, but it's like empty. So
Yeah.
we really need to work on it.
Yeah, I think we need to dance and code. That's what we need to do.
I haven't done any dancing, but it's been a lot of fun. I've done like kind of developer humor type stuff. So yeah, it's been a fun like creative outlet for me, and that's one of the things I've talked about for a long time, is wanting to have more like personality in my videos and the content that I create. So TikTok's a perfect place to be a little further out there and hopefully funny.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I saw your video on YouTube, I think on Twitter, not on YouTube, where you were where it was like 50 seconds or 1 minute video, how you interview and versus the reality when you go on the first day of it. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah. I've cross posted. I think all of them so far, the ones from TikTok, to post them on Twitter, because I've got more people on Twitter that follow me. So I posted there for people to see as well.
Have you tried Instagram Reels? They are really pushing it to compete with TikTok, and now YouTube is also there with YouTube Shorts.
YouTube Shorts, yeah. I've got a pretty sad story about Instagram. I like randomly woke up one day and had been banned. I have no idea why. I didn't do anything bad.
That's
And so
weird.
I don't have an Instagram account anymore, and I haven't wanted to start over, and so I've just kind of left it. So I'm not on Instagram at all. So that's one of the reasons I've spent more time on TikTok actually.
That's super weird. Did they give you a reason for banning you, or like it was?
No, and I went through I went through the appeal process and never found anything. So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you have a huge following on Instagram when that happened, or not?
No, not that I don't even remember what I had, but it wasn't
Yeah.
that much. But I was starting to use it more effectively. Like I was starting to do it more consistently, and didn't really get a point, or didn't really get the opportunity to see if that was gonna help me grow there or not.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Just imagine someone working hard on Instagram or any social media platform, and maybe they have like a following of 40, 50,000 people
Yeah,
after
and
working
then
hard
they
for
ban
years,
you,
and you just
yeah, all your efforts goes away. So maybe you could contest it, or
Yeah, I've sent in like multiple of those, and then also reach out or got connected with someone who works at Facebook who was looking into it for me and found
Okay.
nothing, unfortunately. So I don't
Okay.
know.
well, okay. But at least you have other platforms where you're growing
Yes,
like
yes.
rapidly.
We
Yeah.
usually see you going, I guess, live on Twitter Spaces. I would say once a day, but maybe less, maybe more. But I've seen you and Francesco.
Francisco, yeah.
Yeah.
Both of your
Very
notifications
active on
are
Twitter.
always popping up on my Twitter feed. So I know definitely you are very active on that. Do you have a favorite social media platform by any chance, or you like them all?
Yeah. So Twitter would probably be number one. I mean, like it's so big for the tech community, and that's where like I almost never use Stack Overflow. Like a lot of times, if I have a question for something, I'll post it on Twitter because I'm connected to people who are like knowledgeable in those areas. So I get better responses there than posting on a forum somewhere or something like that. So Twitter is definitely huge, but I have been like watching a lot of TikTok, probably more than I should, and then but really enjoying like creating the content there too. So I would say those are like from just a social, like purely social media. Those are the two that I enjoy most. I don't know if you look at like I don't really think of YouTube as social media. It's a different thing for me. But yeah, I spend a lot of time on Twitter and TikTok.
Yeah, we need to follow your TikTok for sure. I think it will be funny.
Yeah.
All right. So since you've tried so many different career options, so I think you're the right person to ask this question to. So what career path do you think is the kind of like the best for a web developer? So like we have different options. We have like your 9 to 5 job. That's the most common, but then we have freelancing, and then we also have like maybe you could freelance on either Fiverr or Upwork, or maybe like start your own company, try to start your own startup where you like probably go to like I don't know your local technicians and ask them to create like a website or something for them. You could do that, and yeah. So or also you've also tried like you also are a YouTuber, so you've tried creating free and paid content. So
Yeah, there's so many options, and the last one, just creating your own company and becoming, and like if it explodes on Play Store, if you have an application or anything.
Yeah, maybe like develop an application or a
Exactly.
product that you could sell
Yeah.
for millions. I don't know. So yeah, what do you think like is the best option?
Yeah, I mean the short answer there's no best, right? Like it depends on the person. It depends on your interests and a bunch of different things. A lot of that comes from like financial stability too. Like you think about freelancing and potentially doing that full time or doing content creation full time. It's a tough thing to do. It's like more accessible than it's ever been. Like there's more opportunities to do that than there ever has been in the past, but it's still a really hard thing to do. So there's something to be said for like working for a company, knowing you have a salary, knowing you have a paycheck coming. I think that is incredibly valuable. I think that that has certainly allowed me to spend my time outside of my jobs doing the things that I really enjoy, which have also led to opportunities for me and extra income. So like doing YouTube videos and earning money on YouTube ads or doing sponsored content, talked about courses. I could see a day like one of my goals would potentially be to do content full time. And I think I could do that right now if I wanted to, but I love the company that I'm at. I love my team. I love what I'm doing at Auth0. And I make good money doing it. So like having the stability, but also the free time to work on the extra stuff that I enjoy, I feel like is the perfect balance for me right now. And then there's also like, even if you're working for a company, like types of companies can be drastically different. Like you could work for a younger startup, which is going to be a much more modern culture. You may be in a situation where you're working more hours, like depending on what that setup is there, but you have that potential higher return of like, if they get sold, if they get acquired, You have stock options, that sort of stuff. And then you could go the opposite and work for a company that's been around for a long time. You're really confident in their stability of continuing to get that paychecks or get those paychecks. So I think that's something to think about as well, as like if you go to work for a company, what type of company do you want to work for? That's one of the things that I encourage people to ask a lot about is like, what is culture like at a given company? Because I think it makes such a big difference. If you're not happy like in the environment that you're in, if the people around you don't really get you excited, you're probably missing out. So I always encourage people to like, one, ask about that stuff up front, but also like, don't be afraid to reevaluate where you are and make sure like, if you're not excited to go to work every day, I know you can't just leave necessarily, but you can start working towards going somewhere else or finding a different job or a different career path. So I always just say like, pay attention, to how you feel, and then make adjustments based on that.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about the constant paycheck that you get. I 100% we would agree with that. But would you still recommend young developers? Because this is one of the questions we get asked a lot on our Instagram or on our Twitter or sometimes even on YouTube comments that should I do something else with my 9 to 5 job, or would that be enough? Because in some countries, because most of our viewers are from either Asia, from India, and we have a small following from Brazil, and all of them, they ask the same question that web developers or any kind of developer don't get well paid where they are as a 9 to 5 job. And so they are constantly exploring other areas, and we ourselves are not that experienced because we have never tried freelancing or any kind of stuff to offset your income or basically just add as a second income to support yourself. Would you recommend, so with the 9 to 5 job, what would you recommend as other source of income for any developer or web developer?
Yeah. So I don't have a ton of freelancing experience myself, like actual freelancing, very little. Most of my stuff has come from like sponsored content on YouTube and working with people in that sense. I will say like doing content has lots of different benefits. Like in your career, creating content, like to create content, you have to like one, learn stuff, and then to be able to teach it to other people to communicate is like reinforcing the things that you've learned. So it's a great way to continue to build up your skills. It's a great way to get some visibility to the things you've done. And then you never know like who is going to read your blog post or see your video and have a job opening at the company they work at and know based on the content you've created that you're someone that they would like to hire. So I talk about the benefits of content creation a lot. That's what I talk about a lot. So I think there's a lot there. I think you could go out and search for freelance opportunities. My guess would be if you're in an area where web developers aren't paid that well, I would imagine the freelance opportunities in that area are probably similar. So I don't know that would be like the solution, although you could make more money. I think like one thing to look at is so many more jobs are remote now that you could potentially do a job for a company that is based in a different country that pays web developers more. And that's a great potentially idea. Be able to work remotely and take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's definitely a great idea. And like we totally agree, having some kind of online presence is usually a good option and a good thing for everyone to have, like especially now, like in 2021. Not just developers, but people from all different kind of fields must have, at least in my opinion, and I guess Kritika as well, they must have some kind of online presence in whatever they do. And that's one of the reasons we started our YouTube channel as well initially, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it depends on the kind of work you do, like if your job isn't very demanding and it doesn't take a toll on you like mentally and physically, and if you have the time, you might as well go out there and do something extra than your like, your job life or like than your curriculum. So yeah, it won't hurt. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
So,
but how do you manage your time, or do you have a work-life balance, or that doesn't exist? Because you said you have a full-time job. I was not expecting that actually. I thought because you create such nice content, your videos are nicely edited and everything. I thought you wouldn't get time.
Yeah, no, actually, work-life balance is like one of the most important things to me by far. So that is something I'm pretty outspoken about and take very seriously for myself. So I work a full-time job where a lot of my job is content related. So there's a lot of overlap. So the good thing is like if I learn something doing a video myself, it's going to make me better at doing video for Auth0. If I learn something while doing a video at Auth0, it's going to make me better and better at the content that I've already created or will be creating on a personal note. So in that sense, like, I think there's a lot of good overlap. And then the thing for me that makes such a big difference, because people ask me like, how do I create so much content a lot? The thing for me is that I never force myself to do it. It's always because it's stuff that I want to do. So like I've created one video a week, most weeks for a couple of years now on YouTube, and a lot of times 2 videos. But if I don't feel like doing it, if I'm not into it that week, you'll see weeks where I didn't. It doesn't happen very often. But if I don't feel it, I don't force myself to do it, because if you're forcing yourself to do it, you're just not going to enjoy it as much, and it's going to lead to burnout. So in theory, I would like to write a lot more articles, but I don't enjoy it like I do videos, so I just don't write that much. So I think that's the number one thing for me. I have like my wife leaves earlier in the morning, so she leaves at like 6:30 in the morning for work. I don't start like my regular job until 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's just like any other hobby that I would do. I spend an hour or so in the morning working on my content, and I actually do a lot of like shorter videos on YouTube, and a lot of times I'll record, edit, and publish them that morning because I've kind of condensed it down. Yeah.
Okay,
and that makes it easy. Like I get on a camera or a podcast or whatever, and I talk all the time, so I'm really comfortable doing that. So there's not a whole lot of preparation I need to do for a lot of them, and then I could turn it around in an hour, so it doesn't take like all that much time for a YouTube video these days, which is nice.
Yeah, so we've seen many of your videos, and you're talking about content creation. So, and your videos are like really good in content; they're well performing. The algorithm is very generous with your videos as well. So, I want to ask you, where do you get inspiration for your content?
I've talked about this a lot too. Some people struggle to find stuff, and I think that's because they miss the fact that like everything you know is valuable to someone. It's really easy to overlook and think that like, hey, I just learned this thing. Surely everyone else knows this. Like it's really easy to think that, but the reality is no. Like there's always someone that knows more than you, and there's always someone that knows less. So literally every random idea that you have during the day, that's a piece of content. Like my video that I published this morning was on the number one trait in my mind for senior developers, like what makes a senior developer. And that was something I thought about like maybe last night, just like in bed or something. And I was like, you know what, for me, it's like being able to break down problems into smaller ones and communicate that to a team. And again, I talk all the time, so I'm really comfortable talking. So I got on camera this morning and made like 5 bullet points of things I wanted to add in. And then that was the video. So that's what I published this morning. So just random thoughts. I also let like technologies that I either am excited about or want to learn and want to look into, like I use it as a learning opportunity. And I mainly just let it be stuff that, again, I enjoy, because if I started forcing myself to work with things that I'm not excited about, it would show, it wouldn't be as good, and it would take the fun out of it for me.
Yeah,
that would affect.
I'm really glad about what you said, because that is something that I usually say, and I've also said that in one of our previous podcasts with the guest, that everything you know is definitely valuable to someone. And an example is driving a car. Like millions or billions of people drive car every day. But when I came to Canada as a student and I wanted a license, I was watching videos on how a Canadian driving test is done, and people have done that. So people usually think that they need to know a lot more, and which is great because that will motivate you to learn more. But that doesn't mean that you have to wait for one year or 2 years or 5 years, train yourself, and then start creating content or anything. Right? Having your own blog, maybe that is something which is I think it's pretty cool if someone has a blog and they like to write whatever they want.
What's your opinion on it? So since you are a web developer and you've been a web developer in the past as well, so like how important do you think is having a blog or a portfolio website is? How important is that for a web developer?
I think it's like, first, I think it's important to say like having an audience, having content in general is a nice to have. Like it's not a requirement, but if people are looking to give themselves an advantage, if you're looking to get a first job or take a next step in your career and you want an advantage over someone else, that sort of stuff can play a big part. Like when I wanted to transition back to developer advocacy when I was at FedEx, and at the time, like I had created 100 videos on my YouTube channel. It wasn't near as big as it is now. Like it's drastically different, but I had 100 videos that I could show. I had 50 articles that I'd written on a platform called Scotch.io. And like when you're applying for a job where that's your job, my resume didn't even really matter. Like I could just say, here's all of my content. Go and look at this content because
YouTube is my resume.
Yeah. I mean, your resume, like if you think about it, it's just words. Your resume really doesn't mean much. It's just a formality to try to get someone to take a chance to interview you. And so if you have these other things to like really back that up, that's the stuff that really matters. And so it was like I didn't have anything to improve or like to prove. I didn't have to impress anyone. I just had to show like here's the stuff I've done and I want to continue to do that for you. So I think like it can get you your next job. It can get you visibility to the point where people reach out to you about jobs. It could lead to freelance opportunities. It could lead to getting paid to speak somewhere, to do sponsored content. Like there's so many things that come along with having visibility to the awesome stuff that you're doing.
As they say, actions speak like louder than words. So that's exactly what it is.
There are some companies, though, unfortunately, who do not like their employees to be on YouTube or any other social media platform or doing their own thing because they feel like it's kind of a threat to their job because they leave it. And what I say to those people is that those are the kind of companies you probably want to stay away from in the first place. Because if a company does not respect that you want to do something on your own, which you like, I think that just if someone is struggling the same thing, you should probably change your job or start thinking about it.
Yeah, that's one thing I will never sacrifice is
exactly.
All of my personal content and personal brand is my personal content and personal brand, and no one will ever be able to control that for me.
Definitely.
So since I would like to go back to the previous topic, please. So since we were talking about blogs and portfolio websites, so what stack do you think is the best to create a blog?
Yeah, Stack or Tool. Like there's so many things now that we can use.
Like you have WordPress, and then you have like other technologies. You could even create a website using the basic HTML, CSS, or then
you can use Next.js, Jamstack.
Exactly.
And you can even take leverage of Medium.com or
like Substack. There's like already tools that So what do you think is the most viable option?
Yeah, I think the answer is depends, as most answers do, but I'll give you kind of a progression. Like Hashnode and Dev.to and Medium and places like that are, if you're not comfortable with your development skills right now, but you want to start writing, or you just don't want to take the time to build a site yourself and you want to start writing, do one of those. Like I highly recommend, even as a developer, you don't have to develop. You don't have to write the code for your personal site to be able to create content. Like set yourself up on Hashnode in 5 minutes and start creating content there. So I think
Hashnode is pretty good.
Yeah, those are all really great options. I'm particularly a fan of Hashnode. Just like everything that they do, I feel like is really awesome. We're actually doing a joint Twitter space with them in the morning tomorrow.
Did you actually make a video on Hashnode a while ago?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe that's how I know it, because I know I saw a YouTube video which was about online presence. I just didn't remember if it was you or some other creator. So
there's probably a lot of different ones, but I definitely have one that's talking about online presence with Hashnode. So I think those are great options if you want to take like one level up. WordPress is still like an amazing tool. My blog when I started a few years ago was on WordPress, and so you get some experience with like how to host a WordPress site, how to do like deployments of your WordPress site, how to migrate from local instance to your production one. And you get a great editor. Like WordPress has been around for a long time. A lot of people aren't as excited about it, but it's still great for what it is. And so I think that would be great. You can still learn a lot about like how to design with whatever tools or plugins you use. You can learn about SEO and that sort of stuff. And then the next one, and this is like, I think if you have the time and you're looking for a challenge, a great learning experience is to build your own. And so I started with Gatsby a couple of years ago. It's a static site generator framework built on top of React. And it was mainly just, I heard so many people using it that I was like, I guess I'll give it a shot. And so I was using embedded markdown files. So you just write your content like right inside of the source code. And that was kind of cool, but I felt a little weird, like having so many images and blog posts and things like in my source code, it felt a little unnatural to me.
Yeah.
So I started to look for headless CMS options, thinking about like the Jamstack and that sort of stuff. And I found Sanity, and I've been using Sanity IO for my content since then. I'm actually going through like a redesign with my podcast co-host, Amy Dutton.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I will move it to Next.js and Sanity. And Next.js, I think, is such a great option because you can do combination of static pages as well as server-side rendered pages.
Yeah.
So you have the complete flexibility to do whatever you want. And I would say like it's less about the technology specifically that you want to use. If you want to use like Nuxt and Vue or Angular or like whatever you want to use, do that. It'll still be a great learning experience just to build something that that you use and hopefully other people will see every day.
We have been hearing about Jamstack a lot now, and both of us have never tried Jamstack. And we recently had Colby. He's also a YouTube creator, and he was one of our guests recently. And we asked a lot of questions about Jamstack to him, and he did a great job explaining it. But we are still not 100% sure about what it is. I guess we just need to start using it and just experimenting with it to understand more. Apart from that, we have been learning Next.js recently because, I am an Angular person and I have never used React or Vue before, but I am exploring. I still like Angular more, but I've been exploring React and I really like the Next.js platform because of the reasons you just mentioned. Server-side rendering, and it has all the slug that we can use for blog posts, and I think it's an amazing tool to have your own blog. So I guess Hashnode, if someone wants to use a ready-made website, and then your favorite would be not Gatsby, either Next.js or the other one. Which one did you mention for creating your own blog if you want to create from scratch? No.
WordPress.
No, not WordPress. It was
WordPress was the middle
Netlify.
one. There was Nuxt, which is Nuxt.js is basically the Vue equivalent to Next.js, and then there's also SvelteKit, which I've gotten into recently. So SvelteKit is built on top of Svelte, and it's more or less like the Next.js of Svelte. So those three kind of Svelte, Nuxt, and Next have similar capabilities of being able to blend server-side rendered and static pages.
I hope Angular also comes out with a good one because I've been trying and there are a couple of them, but I've tried both of them and they're not really as smooth as Next.js. I hope they come out as well. Otherwise, I'll have to move to React.
So it's Scully is I think it's
Scully,
more specifically a static site generator. I don't think it has like the server-side rendered capabilities that Next and Nuxt and SvelteKit have.
I have used Scully, and I also saw their YouTube video. In their own video, they ran into errors which they were not able to fix by the end. And even I tried it, and it was the same thing for me. Maybe it's already better now. I should give it a try. But if anyone watching this video knows a good framework for Angular for generating static content or blog posts, just let us know in the comments down below.
Is it too new, Scully?
Scully, it's not really new. It has been around for more than a year, I guess now. But I think it was released. The final version was released this year. But I have to check. Okay, perfect. Do you have any experience with any kind of e-commerce website? Because that is one of the other questions that we receive a lot. That I want to start an e-commerce website. What should I use?
Which stack?
Which stack should I use? Because again, there are so many options there. You can create You can create a website with Shopify or anything like that. But you can also do everything from scratch. So, would you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I honestly probably not. This is an area that I don't have a lot of experience in. I know I'm assuming like Colby was a great person to talk about this sort of stuff because he's made lots of content on e-commerce. I will say like I've been experimenting recently with a Stripe integration. So Stripe and Next.js and Auth0 and Supabase and Prisma, like just all the technologies that I've wanted to try. I'm kind of putting them together to try them out. And that's been pretty cool. I would say like Stripe is super, super popular. And I think you'll probably find lots of tutorials and content on how to set that up and integrate with. So I think that's a great option. Shopify, I think is more of like they kind of build the site for you, or maybe maybe there's like a headless experience with Shopify. I'm not really sure, to be honest. But I know Shopify, especially for freelancers, is huge. So I hear about Shopify all the time. And there's other things. I know there's like multiple services, but one that I've heard a lot about is Snipcart, which I think is like kind of your checkout system and e-commerce stuff, but specifically like in the Jamstack. So I think that's one that people have talked about and been enjoying as well. But this is actually like one of the things that I want to learn more about, because I really don't have much experience at all in the e-commerce world.
Same here. We have to. It's in our plan.
Mm-hmm.
One day we'll learn more about that.
Yeah, say in general, like since we're talking about frameworks and like on the other hand, doing everything on yourself, like from scratch. So say in general, what do you prefer, like using frameworks over like doing everything, everything on your own, or like using framework? Basically, these are the two options. What would you prefer?
If you're talking like front end frameworks, like I actually do a decent amount of demos on my YouTube channel with vanilla JavaScript, like just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Yeah.
And those are fun. Like I feel like they're kind of a good exercise to go through, especially as you're learning. But I really don't think I would ever build a real app and not use a framework, because they usually come pre-configured with a build system, and they've got Webpack or whatever like configured in it. And there's so many benefits to that like I would never actually build something with just vanilla JavaScript. Like I would use one of the frameworks that we talked about in the past. And I think like going back to the idea of the Jamstack, like the definition of Jamstack outside of the acronym itself like varies. Like everybody has a slightly different version of what they think the Jamstack is, and that's kind of because of the fact that it's not super specific. Like JavaScript APIs and markup doesn't really tell you a whole lot. So it's kind of open to interpretation. But what I will say about the Jamstack for me is like it's taking existing things that we've done and just using them in a slightly different way and combining them in a different way. And the more what you're seeing is the different services of things you might need to do. So authentication, there's Auth0. There's image optimization and transformations like Cloudinary, and payments like Stripe or Snipcart, like all these different like specific things. There's lots of services that do that thing. So a lot of the Jamstack now is like not writing all that stuff yourself, but just integrating them into an application so that you can spend your time focusing on like, what is the application that you're trying to build versus like the features that you just have to have. Like authentication is not the thing that's going to make your app successful. Exactly. Your image optimization is not the thing that's going to make your thing successful. Like it's the app itself. Those are just things that have to be there for it to be successful. They're not going to be the driving force or the main reasons why it's successful.
So you should basically focus on the core logic or the business logic for your application instead of like reinventing the wheel altogether.
Because it doesn't even make sense to, I guess, especially now to start reinventing the wheel, because I think it will take more time in handling those nuances rather than making your own product would take less time than building all these things around your product from deployment and everything.
Yeah, because there's like two arguments. So I've heard people saying that they're creatures of like not reinventing the wheel. But like I've also heard like if your basics are not clear regarding something and you run into a problem while using a framework or something. For example, if we talk about CSS, now we have Tailwind CSS and Bootstrap, like and other frameworks as well, so that you can use. But like if you run into a problem while using these frameworks and your core concept for CSS are not that good because you've like not really used them, so the time it takes for you to understand what's wrong and debugging the problem is like equivalent, kind of like more or less, to like using the actual thing.
I definitely agree with that too. Like I mentioned earlier, like I think building websites with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is a great exercise. It's not something I would do like for a real thing at this point in my career, but it is something I would highly encourage people to do. And I've made that mistake. Like I wanted to use Bootstrap before I really understood CSS, and I had no idea how to fix the issues that I was having, or I had no idea how to customize it in the way that I wanted to because I didn't have that solid foundation. So I think like as you're learning web development, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript has to be something that you just like iterate on and use that to build 15 very small, relatively simple apps just to get in the habit of really understanding what's there. And the cool thing is like if you do that, by the time you start to use a framework, you have a better understanding of why this framework is here. Like you have a better understanding of how it benefits you, the things that it's taking away that you don't have to do now, which then gives a better understanding of how to debug it or fix it if things go wrong.
Definitely. And like if you're starting any framework like React, Angular, CSS framework, or even a backend framework, I think all the YouTube creators who do teach you these frameworks, they're assuming that you already
Know the
have a
basic.
fundamental knowledge
Yeah.
of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you don't, I would totally agree with you that you should practice a little vanilla stuff first and
Mhm.
then move into a framework, because otherwise you'll just be lost in the end. And yeah, that's not
Yeah.
a good path to take.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, it's worked out for some people, right? Like one of the things that people are really conscious about in the tech community is not telling them too much of like this is exactly how you should learn. So this is our experience. Like it sounds like we agree. This is our experience. It doesn't mean that someone couldn't jump into React before really learning JavaScript. You
Yep.
certainly could. My thought is that it's going to be more difficult that way.
Definitely, definitely. It's like you don't know how to make a table and you went to build a house. Yes, you'll be able to make a house, but
Yeah,
it
it
might
will
have
be more complicated.
more complicated. It might have a lot of flaws, and yeah, it. I wouldn't live in that house.
I've learned that the hard way. I've taken up like some woodworking projects in the last year, like starting from no experience at all, and it's been a fun and frustrating learning experience. I mean, it feels like learning web development from scratch, right? Like you try so hard and you write a bunch of bad code. I cut a bunch of bad wood, and then eventually, like you end up learning enough to build something. You can't see it at this angle, but I remodeled the closet in my office
wow.
and put in
Okay.
like custom shelves and stuff, which I'm really proud of, but it took like so many hours of work and also so many hours of me being frustrated and like not wanting to do it because I was frustrated, which is exactly like learning anything. So I think
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
people that are learning web development, like if you're frustrated and it seems hard, that's because it
Yeah.
is, and that's because it's normal. Like that's what all of us go through.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, so just like I just want to understand what's the deal with data structures and algorithms. So like we talk about like some fundamentals, the stuff we learn in school, and the stuff that is required for cracking any, I think, job interview as well for most of the companies. So even when you interview for like a position of a web developer or a full stack developer or whatever, like a software engineer, they ask you questions related to like maybe they give you a problem to solve, an algorithm problem, or like ask you questions related to data structure and stuff.
Tree
but you
graphs,
know,
etc.
yeah, tree graph and like those kind of thing, array strings. But you kind of like never end up using those stuff in your actual job when you work as a web developer, because like you mostly use front and back end frameworks, a little bit of deployment and stuff like that. So yeah, what are your thoughts about on that?
Yeah, it's definitely mixed. So I've been through I've gone through the Google interview process twice, where I flew to New York City and did like 6 hours worth of interviews, and they're all
Wow.
like whiteboarding, and they want you to not only solve the problem but solve them like in the most efficient way, and it's really
Yes,
intense. It's
exactly.
actually like they're really good at doing that because they talk through it with you, and they're actually really good at it. But it is a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
I think like there's a lot of pushback on those types of interviews because it doesn't, like in the real world, like if you give me a complicated problem, sure, I'll think about it, but then I'll go Google what I need to figure it out, or I'll use built-in functions. Like if they ask you to write a sorting algorithm, there's built-in sort into every language that's already optimized. So I don't really need, like if you ask me to write a sort algorithm from scratch other than bubble sort, I wouldn't be able to do it. But I don't care because I don't need to. Like I just don't need to do that. So I think like there's part of the perspective of those interviews in a lot of cases don't make sense. I think they're really reserved for like the FANG type companies, Facebook, I don't even know, Google, Netflix, and Amazon. I think they're kind of reserved for really those top tiers, because at a certain point you have to have some way to try to differentiate with people, because you have tons of really good candidates.
Yeah.
But I do think I think that's one of the things that I benefited from, which I don't feel like I learned a ton from my college degree, but data structures and algorithms is definitely a set of context that I have that a lot of people who go through boot camps, for example, don't. But at the same time, people that have gone through boot camps have way more practical knowledge than I had. I had never used Git or GitHub. I had never deployed a website. I had never used a host. I had never done used a database. I'd never done a lot of those things.
Yeah.
So they're very different, right? But I think it's helpful for people that don't have a background in data structures and algorithms to seek out a background in data structures and algorithms. Because if you get in one of those types of interviews where they're ask you to solve a problem. It can obviously help you do that. And then you just have a little bit better understanding of like the science behind the computer. That's why it's called computer science, and how things work and how to make them work in the most optimal fashion. So I encourage for the bootcamp students that I've taught them to go out and take on additional resources and do those practice problems. And like there's a course by Colt Steele, who's one of my favorite instructors on Udemy, doing data structures and algorithms with JavaScript. It's a perfect progression of like, you've learned JavaScript, now you can take it to the next level of learning some of the science behind the computer and take that into your interviews and then the solutions and things that you come up with in the future.
Yeah, you really said it well, that it's a science behind, and that's why it's called computer science. And I totally agree. The people who go to boot camps, regardless of the fact they have a degree or not, there's so many practical things that they know, and which is great. And even we came to Canada for our masters, but in our bachelor's or in our masters, we never really had to set up a backend, a front end, and connect them with a database. And we just never had to do that. And we took a course, I think, by Andre Negoe and Maximilian
Schwarzmüller.
Yeah, we are destroying their names. It's a German name. It's complicated for us to pronounce, but we'll add links to them in the description below. We are not sponsored or anything, but they were really great courses. And they helped us learn so many things that we finally understood that, wow, this is great. But on the other hand, if you are just out of boot camp and you have to write a small piece of logic in which there will be a lot of data and you want to retrieve that data very often, now you do need some data structure skills. You do need some algorithm skills. You do need to know that using an array for a long list of data where you have to find everything is not the best idea. Maybe you should use a hash map or any kind of indexing data structure. So having, I guess, a mixture of both is the best case scenario. But I know why people are frustrated learning data structure and algorithm, because I recently switched jobs like 2 months ago. And for 2 years, I was working for the same company, never looked at trees, graphs, PFS, BFS, etc. I had to give interviews. So for 1 month, brought out my green book, cracking the coding interview, solved some questions, went to online websites, HackerRank and all those stuff. Yeah. But now I won't touch them again until I have to find a new job. So it's
Yeah, I think in my opinion, the thing is each of them have their own specific purpose. So like schools, they're there to give you like a more broader view of computer science. And they want to tell you like, they want to expose you to different domains in computer science that you can like pursue after your graduation. And bootcamp really has a very specialized program. It's a very specialized program. So it's like, I don't know, like it could be specialized for ML or AI or maybe for even like web development. So it condenses like all those things into 6 months, like a 6 month or a 3 month program. So like each of them, they serve a very like specialized purpose.
Yeah. Totally agree. I have one question for you, which I didn't plan, but you said about being a developer advocate and creating videos for the company you work for. You said something like that. I don't really remember the exact statement, but that is kind of my dream. Like if I could create content as a full-time job and then I could create content for myself, that's so awesome. So how did you get into that career, and how can someone, or me being selfish here, can progress towards that? Because I just think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you're already doing it, right? Like you're creating content. So the advice for people who haven't started creating content is to start creating content. We live in a world that it's never been this easy to get started. Not saying it is easy, it's just easier than it's ever been. Most people are nervous about being on camera, for example, or they're nervous about writing a blog post for like thinking they're going to be judged or critiqued or things like that. And the biggest piece of advice is to just move past that. Like that's one of the things that I am able to do in my career is like, even though emotionally I might be scared or intimidated, I can force myself to do something that I know is going to be beneficial for me. So it's just about one, getting started, and then two, continuing to do it and keeping that consistency. So again, when I went to apply for my job, go look at my YouTube channel with 100 videos, go look at my blog post that I've written, which is 50 of them. And that's really going to speak for itself. So as you build up that portfolio for yourself and get a little bit more visibility to the content that you create, it's going to carry more and more weight. And so if your goal was to get into DevRel, into a developer advocate position, continue to create content, take on like speaking engagements, like apply to speak at a local meetup or a local conference, or now in a COVID world, like a virtual meetup or conference.
Yeah.
Just start doing that stuff and continue to do it. And those are the types of activities that that lead to the type of role that I'm in. And I have a great job that I love. And then I also get to go home, or I stay home, I work remotely, but I, outside of the regular hours, get to do additional things that I enjoy on my own. But yeah, to go down that career path is creating content, keeping consistent with it, and using that as your resume going forward.
That's pretty awesome. So, do you get to keep the content that you create for your company as a developer advocate under your name, or is it company's property and they host it somewhere else? It's only for internal employees. Like how does that work? I'm just very curious about this. I don't know much about this field.
Yeah. So most of like the content that I create specifically for Auth0 is public content that's under their brand and on their channel. So I would create videos for our Auth0 channel or blog posts for the Auth0 blog. That doesn't mean that I can't like do a YouTube video or a blog post on my personal channel that is relevant to Auth0. I could do that also. But the majority of the stuff that I do on Auth0 itself is for Auth0 and Auth0 channels. But I have, if you look at like my videos, I've got like one or two that use Auth0 as part of the demo that I'm building.
Okay, that's great.
Also, for these kinds of jobs, like for developer advocate and stuff, so how does it work? Do you need to approach to the companies and say, like, I've been creating content since this many years, and this is my profile, and would you like to interview me or stuff like that? Or do they approach you?
It's just like any other role. I mean, these jobs get posted on LinkedIn and Glassdoor and on their company website, so you can check the companies that you're interested in working at and seeing if they have open positions. Another thing that I didn't mention earlier is like just reach out to people that do the job that you want to do, regardless of if it's a developer advocate or anything else. Like go and ask people who are in those positions about their background, what they did, what advice they have, what they do now. I think that's a pretty underrated aspect of the concept of networking is just reach out to the people that are doing the thing that you want to and ask about their journey and any advice that they have to get to how they got to be where they are.
That's a great advice. And we also tell our viewers or even our friends who are struggling to find a job or, are just starting, that go to meetups. I think meetups are the best place to go. When I was a student, I was pretty broke, and meetups were great because you meet great people and you get free pizza. Like,
free beer and free pizza.
What else do you want? You have free dinner and you get to network. And if it's a good presentation, you get to learn something new. And I even got my first paid part-time job in Canada in our web dev field in a meetup, because there was a person who was looking for an experienced developer for a part-time job. And I'm still connected to him. And he saw me in one meetup. I had no experience when I came to Canada. So he gave me his business card, but didn't really offer me an interview because I didn't have any industry experience. But then he started seeing me in multiple meetups because he's an enthusiast, and he was like, okay, you are here again. Oh, here you are again. And one day he said, are you coming to the meetup again? I said, yes. He said, okay, just stay after the interview, after the meetup for half an hour. I want to take your interview. And if you're still interested, we would like to move forward with you. And that was just great. That point of my life, I was working in a factory, doing just enough to pay my rent and pay my bills, because being an international student in Canada or America can be very expensive, especially you have to pay the international fee and everything. And just going to meetups can really help you a lot. And I think networking definitely helps 100%.
Yeah, and plus today I heard in one of the podcasts I was listening to that networking is not, it's not like just like going to a meetup and handing out resumes, or like if you're a business owner, handing out business cards at a meetup or at any events. It's like a lifestyle. So you got to network wherever you go. You got to like live it. So, no matter it. I mean, you never know where you find your prospective employer or maybe like an employee. So you gotta really, network everywhere, like wherever you go, and live it like a lifestyle.
For sure.
It's it was just worth mentioning. So so let's move on to our final section.
Yes.
So we like to call it the Coder's Quattro. It's a funny name. So And so these are the 4 questions that are the same, and we ask them to all of our guests. And we're excited to hear your responses. So the first question would be, what framework / technology / language do you think a new developer should learn?
I mean, JavaScript is definitely the area that I'm in. I think like JavaScript, Python, and a few others are definitely great places to start. I definitely prefer JavaScript over something like Java or C#. That's where I started. It's a lot easier to just start writing code with Java and Python and a few other examples. So that's definitely where I would start. And then as people, like we said, get some of those fundamentals, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you can move into a framework. It doesn't really matter, React, Vue, Angular, either all of them are great. And then what I encourage people to do also is like, regardless of whether or not you want to specifically be a front-end developer or a back-end developer or full stack, I encourage people to learn full stack, like take your JavaScript and go and learn Node so that you have the understanding of how applications work front-end to back-end. And even if you never write back-end code at your job, having the understanding of how it works is going to help you work with other people. So that's usually my like progression. Start with JavaScript, HTML, CSS, learn a framework like React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, and then tie in the backend with Node to kind of bring it all together.
Definitely, and JavaScript is our most famous answer for this question.
Yes.
For so many reasons. Like you mentioned, you can do front end, you can do back end, you can even create native mobile applications using JavaScript, and then you can even create desktop applications with some frameworks. I mean, you can literally do almost anything at this point. I just think for data science, for AI, ML, Python is great. But otherwise, JavaScript can be used for almost anything.
I was just reading the other day. I think now you can also use JavaScript for deep learning using a framework called, I don't exactly remember what it's called, but like, I think, you could do JavaScript, deep learning with JavaScript. So, yeah. So the next question is, when you want to learn something new, what do you prefer, watching videos or reading the documentation?
I prefer videos, so that's part of why I create videos, because that's kind of the way that I learn best. Like I watch videos at 2 times speed, so I can watch videos and listen to podcasts and save some time because I don't have to listen for the whole amount of time it should take because I listen to it faster. And then you can pause and like rewind really easily in video, so I prefer that. I would say like second to that is blog posts. So I read a lot of blog articles as well. You get the benefit again of like you can scroll back up, you can scroll back down. They've got code snippets there usually. Documentation is really kind of a last resort. Like if I can't find exactly what I need, then I'll go into the documentation to find the details for it. But yeah, I love tutorials on YouTube videos. I've done a lot of Udemy courses. I've done courses from other content creators as well, and then read a lot of blog posts too.
Yeah, I have pretty much the same philosophy. I love watching videos rather than going through documentation, and especially some libraries might not have great documentations. So I just watch a video, get my basics clear, and then read the documentation if I need something very particular to in a framework or any language to work with.
All right, correct. But before moving on to the next question, I just remember the name of the framework was TensorFlow.js.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
TensorFlow.js.
So yeah, you could use TensorFlow.js and use JavaScript or deep learning as well. All right, so moving on to the next question. So do you think going to college or university is important in the field of computer science?
I don't think it's the kind of thing that's required at all. I think for me, and like coming out of high school, like college was always what I was going to do next, and I would never trade my college experience for anything. I had an amazing time in so many regards, and it was just like much more so than computer science. Like computer science was really just something I did for school. It wasn't something I necessarily loved and appreciated at the time, but just being at university was huge. It was an amazing time for me. So I would never trade that for anything. But again, like I look back at the things that I learned, and I did get the fundamentals of like data structures and algorithms, but I also like, I never built a real application. I never worked with a database. I never worked with Git and GitHub, and I'd never done so many things that people that self-teach and go through boot camps learn, because they're trying to get you ready to like immediately go and get a job. So yeah, getting a computer science degree is by no means necessary. It certainly can be useful if it fits into where you are in your career and life and how old you are and the time you have and the money that you have. But there's so many different options there. Whether it's going through a in-person boot camp, going through a virtual boot camp, there's tons of different ways that money is structured with boot camps. You can find one that works for you. And if you're like literally just getting started and want to know if you're even interested in it, there's way too many free resources to pay any money up front. Like just go watch a few YouTube videos to get started and then decide it's something that you want to invest more in.
Definitely. And if you don't like YouTube videos and like a proper course structured, I mean, Udemy is just great. I've seen you have a couple of courses on Udemy as well, and we will link them in the description below for if anyone wants to learn from you. But for a price of lunch, you can literally learn everything that there is about a framework, a language, technology, anything it is. Like I personally did a course on Angular, and Kritika did a course on full stack development. And I never had to learn Angular more than that. It was a great course, a 30-hour course, but I have been using Angular for 2 years and I never had to learn anything outside of that. Obviously, when you use a specific library, you just read more about that. But in terms of Angular concepts, never. And even just doing that course gave me knowledge of so many in-depth stuff that people who are working with Angular since last 3-4 years didn't know. And I had to tell them that, this is better. You should do it this way. With just a $14 course on Udemy, it's just mind blowing.
Yeah. So coming out of school, like just to share my experience, coming out of school, I didn't know because computer science is such a vast field. I really don't know which domain I wanted to pursue after my master's. So but then in masters, I was exposed to so many different domains. So now I knew, I had the knowledge and I had the power to decide. So then I decided to go in web development, but then there were so many great courses out there that I could do on web development for specialization and stuff. So yeah, it really helped.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the final question. What's your favorite programming language? But I guess
I think we know the answer to this, but we have to ask.
But yeah, we require you to validate. Is it JavaScript?
Yeah, definitely no surprises there. Definitely JavaScript.
Perfect.
Now we don't have a question, but we do have a favor to ask for. Can you please tell the audience to hit the like button before they go and the subscribe button?
Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out more videos in the future.
Perfect.
So just to tell the audience if they want to connect to you directly, so where should they go? We know you're very active on Twitter, but what platform can they use to connect to you directly?
Yeah, Twitter is the best place, honestly. So James Q Quick on Twitter is the best place to reach out.
Perfect. So we're going to put links to all your social media platforms and everything down in the description below. So if anyone wants to check them out, they can.
Definitely. And one final bonus question that's only for you is Quick your real surname, or is it a quick tutorial thing that I make tutorials very quick or something like that?
Yeah, it actually it is my real last name, so it works out really well, and it makes for a fun brand as well. And then the other fun fact is my middle initial is actually Q, so James Q Quick. My middle name is Quentin.
It's your yeah. I think that we saw your tweet. When you said talk about your surnames, then
but I was not sure if you're joking or you were saying this.
Yeah, but
no, it's my real name. Yeah.
Okay, that's a interesting last name. Mine is just boring. So
yeah.
Perfect.
All right, perfect. It was a pleasure meeting you virtually and having a chat with you. Definitely. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we don't expect any YouTuber who has a huge following like you have to come on our podcast, on our channel. We have such a small following right now, and we really appreciate that you came on our channel and had a chat with us.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to join. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a good evening.